Outrage is absolutely. Oh, God. Yeah. Kind of the water we're swimming.
Hello, welcome to Tripod. The room looks like it might tip over that way because there are about twice as many people on that side of the room.
Okay, well, we should move over then.
So thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's been confusing trying to figure out when to carry on and when to cancel and so forth. So the first speaker tonight is Michelle Douglas. And she's the CEO at Emergency Food Network and has been with the company for 5 years. That said, her passion for food, food justice, and feeding people goes much further back. She believes that food and housing are the two fundamental social justice issues of our time. We have both the obligation and the privilege to feed people as part of our work, and she is deeply motivated by that responsibility and opportunity. She has lived in Tacoma for over 20 years and loves it here. She is also a passionate artist, mostly working with pen, paper, and clay. Michelle is mildly athletic and can often be found doing Tacoma cardio, otherwise known as walking on the 30th Street Hill. The Center for Spiritual Living is her spiritual home, and she is excited to meet all of you. Michelle, you want to come up?
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. I think this is only the second time I've been out to do a presentation in 2 years. Is it hard to hear me with it on? Okay, great. I won't breathe on you from here. So nice to be here with you tonight. Would you mind just putting down the house lights just a bit? Perfect. Thank you. So Emergency Food Network, we're in our 40th year, and I'm really honored to be the CEO there, and happy to be here tonight to talk to you about our work in community, which has been going on for a really long time in 40 years. I think I didn't understand how this goes. Do I hit the button, or do you hit the button?
You're hitting the button.
I'm not hitting the button. It's just going. I have hit no buttons. Nope. Or if I did, I didn't know I knew how to do that. I am going to talk really, really quick now. Okay, so we're just going to go forward and hope for the best here, because it looks like it's going to go with or without me. So we can, our mission is to provide a consistent, nutritious, and diverse food supply to Pierce County so that no one goes hungry. And we don't do that alone. In fact, we do it with people. And so today, what I really wanted to talk about is the people that make it happen. And it is a wide, wide network here in Pierce County that keeps people fed. Overall, in America right now, we're seeing a huge hunger crisis. Here in Washington State, in Pierce County, we have higher rates than most of the state, and we're at 1 in 9 people are currently hungry, which means they don't have access to 3 consistent meals today. I'm just going to go because it's going, so you just have to. All right. I don't think that this does not work. So I'm just going to talk, and then you all can catch up with the slides, okay? So as I said, it's 1 in 9. So 54% of the people that we serve are seniors and children. And what we know about that is it averages out to about 1.9 million visits to food pantries in Pierce County. And when we think about the network, what it is it's Emergency Food Network. We act as a distribution center. So we're like the big distribution center, and then we give out food to 70 food pantries. And those 70 food pantries are the ones that are working every day with community members that are coming in that are hungry. In 2020, we hit an unprecedented crisis in Pierce County. We had no idea how we were going to feed people. at the quantity that we were expecting. Initial estimates of what the COVID pandemic would mean for the emergency food system across the country was an increase of 100%. So when you just sit with that for a second, there's not a food pantry in America that was ready to serve 100% increase. It's just an impossible thing to even think about how it would happen. And so we were really fortunate. Our highest month in 2020 was a 70% increase, and we kind of hit about an average of between 40 and 50% across the entire county. But what it meant was that we needed to learn how to give food out in a different way very, very quickly. Emergency Food Network has been listed as kind of the emergency response for all emergency services in Pierce County for 40 years. But every model we had was about bringing people together. So we had plans for taking over the Tacoma Dome. We were going to take the kitchen at Bethel School District, and we were going to do soup kitchens, and we were going to do big meals. That was our plan for how we were going to handle emergency response. There was no emergency response plan for a pandemic. And I think, as a community, we've really learned that it is different to try to bring people in to give them food and push them apart at the same time. When we think about what does 6 feet mean, think about that in terms, if you've ever been in a food pantry, typically they're very small, right? They're a sixth of the size of this room. And so we all had to adapt really quickly. And what that looked like for us as the main purveyor of services was moving very quickly to a box model where people could pull up their car or walk up to a table and receive a box of shelf-stable food. It looked like an increase in buying food for us. From a typical buy for us in a year is about $400,000. The first year we spent $2.5 million on food. And it was like playing the stock market. So we would be in a position where I would get a 911 text on my phone, and that text might say something like, "We found peanut butter," and we would buy it from anywhere in the country we could get it. And so that's what it looked like. And our volunteer services were the core backbone of what we did. So that's a million of these pictures that you see going behind me. We have 2,800 volunteers in a year. 2,800 people come out and they work with us. I mean, it's really, truly staggering. And so those people do everything from, I'm just going to talk as these images go through. Here they are, they're putting together food drives. They do events with us. We have an amazing farm out in the Puyallup Valley. So we have 8 acres of farmland out there. We grow about 100,000 pounds of produce. Prior to the pandemic, we grew with a crew from the Women's Correctional Facility of 9 women, 5 days a week. So I want you to imagine, too, the labor shortage we hit really, really quickly. And I love that program. I hope that program's coming back. I mean, I'm just going to take a moment to diverge into the fact that in the United States, we have unacceptable incarceration rates. We have no job training programs while people are in for the majority of inmates. And then we have no reentry programs. And that's what I love about our program, is that we have women that come out. Very few of them end up going on to be farmers. But what they learn with us is food sovereignty. They learn how to grow their own food, and no one can ever take that away from them again. They learn pride. They learn how to make choice again. When you're in prison, you never get to make a choice, right? Everything is dictated for you. I remember we often supplement with our program. We are able to supplement the food the women have to eat. And I'd be like, "Do you like beets?" Be like, "I don't know, I never had a beet," right? Or, "I don't usually get to choose." And by 2 months later, they're like, "I do like those beets," or, "Michelle, those are disgusting. Don't ever bring them again." But either way, right? We all make choices every day, and when you're incarcerated, you lose a lot of that. So I want to get back to my point. I want you to imagine, like, COVID hit on March 13th was when it was declared a national pandemic. That is the very beginning of the growing season. So we quickly changed course, and we decided that we would do as much as we could to bring food locally into the system. So that first year, we ordered more seeds, we ordered more soil, and we got together 10,000 vegetable starts. And we put them out with Pierce County Development, and we did farmers markets, and we did little tiny roadside stands, and we taught people how to grow their own food. I mean, I think it's hard to remember 2 years in, but we didn't know how incredibly disconnected the food supply might become. So volunteers came out to the farm. You've seen their photos go through. They grew food with us. They just did everything that you can imagine. We also really rely on what we call repack. And what we do is we buy food in bulk. And then volunteers come in and they push that down into family-sized bags. It takes a tremendous amount of people to do that. But I want you to just pause for a moment and understand the cost differential. If I buy a truckload of rice in 50-pound bags and volunteers come in and repack it, that's about $20,000 to buy that truckload of rice. If I have to buy that rice already packaged, it's about $30,000. So, I can buy a half a load again by using that volunteer workforce. We had people do food drives all over the county. So their businesses came together and they raised funds, they raised food, they had peanut butter drives. Local Union 430, they brought in over 11,000 jars of peanut butter. So it's really us surviving the pandemic and our community surviving the pandemic is about the people behind it. I don't know if you've noticed the photo that is on this slide reel, I know, which is of the National Guard. At one point, they joined us at the Tacoma Dome, and they distributed 200,000 pounds of potatoes with us in 6 hours. So, it's like Potato Fest 2020. And then later, the National Guard came to our aid again in the beginning of this year. We hit a point where we were down to 2 staff left in our warehouse. That's how many people we had so many people out with COVID and so many people out on quarantine that we had 2 people left. Well, we had a contingency plan that was designed to take us through the pandemic. And step C of crisis was to call in the National Guard. And we did. We had to call in the National Guard so we could keep operating and distributing food. Because EFN distributes, in 2020, we distributed over 19 million pounds of food. Last year, we distributed about 15.5 million. So that is a huge percentage of the food that goes out into the county. And for those 70 food banks that we serve, some of them we might only provide 20% of the food they distribute, but some of them we might provide 99% of the food that we distribute. I know that I'm almost out of time here, but what I wanted to mention is the images that you don't see as you're looking through this. And it's very deliberate on our part. What you don't see is people lined up at a food line. You don't see people that are really hungry, that are trying to get food today. And the reason for that is it's my belief that everybody deserves the dignity of having enough to eat, and that when we can provide that food for them or we can help them get through today, we need to do that in a way that isn't exploitive, that doesn't put them up on show, but just allows them to get that food. So that's why we really try to focus on the amazing volunteers, the staff that work for EFM, the board, the people that donate. It's an incredible spiderweb network here in Pierce County that keeps our neighbors fed. So, thank you so much.
Questions? I want to say I go once a month to the place on 92nd Street to bag food.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's really fun. We
Yeah.
have a great time, and they're so wonderful and supportive. And
Is that Spanaway Food Bank?
no, it's the one you got the address up there.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so do you go to us and bag it into the individual bags?
Yeah.
Okay, great, wonderful.
And then,
Thank you.
what was it? I don't know how many pounds of oatmeal too.
Yeah, that's a lot of oatmeal.
Oatmeal is a big one.
Yeah, we bag oatmeal, rice, and pasta. We bag 8 days. We bag 8 shifts a week typically.
They're really nice down there.
Good, thank you.
Do you still have the draft horses coming out to Mother Earth?
We don't. People loved that program. So we used to have the old school draft horses come out and plow. was actually pretty hard on the dirt because it's really compressive, but it was a beautiful site. So we don't still have that, but we do still have Mother Earth Farm, and Mother Earth Farm grows about 100,000 pounds of food annually and over 100 varietals. And we really focus on the food that people miss. So when we think about it, if you're from a different part of the world or a different part of the United States, there's probably something that's food related that means home to you. And that's the food that we try to grow, and that means like over 40 kinds of Asian greens.
Where did you get that farm?
So it's a wonderful story. We've had that farm for just about 20 years now, and it is through the matriarchal line of a family. The current family member that owns it is Nora Hightower, and her mother owned it before that, and it's always passed through the female line. And so her mom originally started working with us, and now Nora works with us. And Nora has bought the farm from her sister so that it can go with us for a long time. We just signed another 10-year lease with them. It's been pretty exciting, yeah. And it's a super unique program. One, to farm with women that are currently incarcerated, and then also, secondly, not many food pantries have a farm. And when they do have a farm, typically they do monoculture. So like there's one in Clark County, and all they farm are carrots, which is a lot of carrots. But because we grow such a variety, people really get to go through the seasons with us and see just the most beautiful produce. And it usually goes from pick to a client's hands in about 48 to 50 hours. It's pretty amazingly fast. I think we're beating Met Market, I'm just gonna be honest. Yes?
So speaking of the Asian greens as an example, do the food pantries send you menus that you're saying we need these 5 types of greens, and are there options that make the food items available as a choice to the consumer?
It doesn't work exactly like that. I describe the emergency food business as proactively planning to be reactive. And what I mean by that is it's often what's available. We, just like everybody else, we grow with organic practices. So we sometimes have, we'll get a certain vegetable or fruit that gets a huge pest invasion and goes down. The pick comes on as it does. What we try to do for our food pantries is provide a variety to them and then rotate every single week so they don't get the same product week after week. And that's one of the reasons we grow so many varietals, is so that we can give them a lot of that. We do go out to the food pantries and interview clients, pre-COVID, to say, what would you most want to have? What can you not get in your neighborhood? What do you miss? So that's kind of how we prioritize. And then we have geographic and ethnic data on all the food pantries that we serve. And so we know certain things are more valuable to certain communities than others. So for example, we grow about 25 different kinds of peppers. We grow a lot of tomatillos, and those go to food pantries that have a higher Latinx population. We grow a lot of cabbages and things like that, and they go to food pantries with higher Russian populations. So that is one way that we try to diversify and get culturally specific food out there. Any other questions?
Yes, one last question. When you drive around Tacoma, since COVID hit, I think that's when you see homes, residences, with free food out in front.
Uh-huh.
What do you know about that?
So that's David, and he does an awesome job, I think. And Food is Free is his program. Food is Free is actually a worldwide organization, and it's a concept that neighbors can help neighbors eat. And I love it. So the way that we partner with them is we are really fortunate to have a campus up in Lakewood. So when he has extra wood that he's trying to build with, we hold it for him. Also, when we get a large load, so for example, we're really good partners with Del Monte, and Del Monte will show up with a truckload of bananas. So just for context, that's 20 pallets of bananas stacked higher than I am. It's a lot of bananas, and the shelf life on those bananas is about 4 days. So we'll call Dave and say, can you do a big banana giveaway for us? And he works with Calvary Baptist Church. So he'll set up a banana giveaway. We'll get the bananas there, and then we'll do half of those, pallets with our food pantries out to those guests, and another half out through Food is Free. One of the things that I love about Food is Free is it's the idea that everybody can help make an impact on hunger in their neighborhood. You know, you can put out your extra canned goods, you can grow a row. We really recommend that. One of the things, we upped our starts from 10,000 to 20,000, and we said, if you're growing too much of anything, you know, the food bank would love to have this donated back. And so it's an excellent way to work together to come up with, you know, a common good, I think. So I know when I have extra of something, I always put it on the Food is Free table in my neighborhood. And I love that idea that it's open 24/7. When you work with a food pantry like ours, we have a lot of funding requirements, right? So we're partially funded by the federal government, we're funded by the state, we're funded by the county, we're funded by the city. And while all of that are amazing resources and it makes our work possible, at the same time, all of those people have their requirements, right? They want a name, they want an address, they want an ethnicity, they want to know how many people in your household, all of those things. And especially for our undocumented neighbors, sometimes that's a huge threat. And so I love that Food is Free is an opportunity, another way. I think we need a lot of ways to keep people fed. What we know is, I want you to think about 10 people that you know, right? 1 in 9. So out of that 10, somebody is hungry. And they're not getting 3 meals today. And I don't know the last time you were hungry, but I mean, I'm late for my afternoon snack and I start getting grouchy. So I think, you know, if we really sit in someone's shoes and think about what that is to be giving up lunch so your kid can eat, or not having breakfast, or any of those things, it becomes impossible to thrive, nonetheless survive.
Great. Thank you so much. So next is Timothy Harris. I guess I can take this off. He started his first alternative newspaper, Critical Times, at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he graduated in 1987 with a BA in Social Thought and Political Economy. In 1992, Harris founded the homeless-led Spare Change newspaper while working as direct action style organizer at Boston Jobs with Peace. In 1994, Harris founded Real Change in Seattle and grew the paper over the next 26 years into a weekly publication that provided immediate work for more than 300 people each month. Harris is a lifelong leader in the international street paper movement and is on the board of directors of the Glasgow-based International Network of Street Papers. That's INSPNGO. Currently, Harris is pioneering a new street paper model that will build bridges of empathy and understanding in communities across Washington state. Dignity City will launch Tacoma Street Sales in May 2022 and work to be statewide within 3 years. Tim?
Thanks, Lynn. It's great to see everybody. Appreciate you all coming out and being here. So as you heard in Lynn's introduction, I've spent the majority of my life working to empower homeless folks. And it's just kind of getting combobulated here. Hang on a second. So I have some historic photos to show. Let me see if this thing works. There's me back in 1989, something like that, with the Street Magazine crew in Boston, and we were bitching to the Boston Globe about how New York's street paper, Street News, which is widely regarded as the seminal street paper in North America, stole our idea. And this is me in London in 1997 at an early meeting of the International Network of Street Papers. Back in those days, we all met around a table with simultaneous translation headsets. Those are translators in those booths back there, and you could dial it into the language. That's me back when I had hair. And the crew from Chicago, Streetwise, we had just worked together to form the North American Street Newspaper Association, and that's why we were invited to the international conference in London. So I am best known, there we go. I'm best known for starting Seattle's Real Change back in 1994. And most of the slides that you see tonight are going to be from my time there. And there's the original staff. That's me, the first staff person, Azula Sue, and Sid Vicious, the office cat. Very professional Real Change office. The street news covers and layouts that you see tonight are pretty much all done by John Williams. He's my partner in Dignity City. We worked together at Real Change for about 10 years, and we both split about the same time to move on to other things. This is one of his covers. I've got some like random covers and layouts just sort of distributed through here because I was challenged to come with 50 images. And John also, this is one of John's drawings. He's a very talented artist. And there's some of our vendors. What? I'm confused about the order of the slides. But anyway, let me tell you a little bit about what street papers are. I think that's what was supposed to be here. What street papers are, they offer immediate work opportunity that meets people where they're at. That's the essential idea. Vendors are self-employed, they buy their papers at cost, and they sell them for the cover price plus tips. Street papers work because they offer a hand up rather than a handout, and they foster the human relationships and community that homeless people need to feel valued and accepted. As people regain confidence in themselves and experience the validation of a supportive community, they're often motivated to make other changes in their lives and take action as well for the systemic change that we need. So let me tell you about Richard Smith. Richard Smith was one of the first vendors that I really got to know at Real Change. And Richard was a heroin addict. He really couldn't look people in the eye. He was always just kind of looking down at his feet. He had a fairly profound stutter. And after about a year of selling the paper, Richard dramatically changed. He was walking taller, he was in much better health, and he gained enough confidence in himself that his stutter almost disappeared. And I interviewed him for a Vendor of the Month profile. And I asked him what had changed. And this totally changed the way I looked at what I was doing. He said, I used to hate people. Now, all my life, I've just been kicked around, and I really didn't have any use for anyone. And then when he started selling the paper, Richard found people that cared about him, treated him like a person. And not long after that conversation that I had with him, Richard got clean, and like a lot of vendors, he regained a lot of his self-esteem in selling the paper and was ready to face his addiction and do the work that he needed to do to get clean. And over the time I've been doing this, I've seen variations on that same story time and time again. And again, hearing Richard's story was the moment that I really understood that street papers are about relationships more than anything else. So why am I here in Tacoma working on launching another street paper? There it is. That's the mock-up of our first issue that doesn't exist yet. but I'll give you a bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. It's a magazine. In the time that I've been doing this work, I've been frustrated that street papers are not in more communities. And I've taken on the challenge of taking the street paper model and making it available beyond just major metropolitan areas like Seattle, Portland, and Denver. So we're working on a new kind of street paper that's built to work in places like Tacoma, Spokane, Yakima, and be flexible. We're launching in Tacoma this May. We plan to be statewide within 3 years. And that's our project. I want to tell you a bit about what, oh, I don't mean to go there so fast. Let me tell you a bit about what drew me to this work, a little bit about my history. My identification with people on the street began when I was a teen. I was diagnosed as ADD when I was 47, and that explains a lot that happened before then. When I was in grade school, I got high scores on standardized tests, but was bored and, didn't pay attention very well. And to say that schools in the 60s and 70s weren't geared to bright kids with attention disorders is a bit of an understatement. And on top of that, my home life was an abusive nightmare, and I responded mostly by withdrawing and doing drugs. So by 5th grade, I was skipping school to stay home and huff Pam. By junior high, I was a chronic truant, barely devoted stoner. In 10th grade, I got kicked out of all 3 high schools in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And by 17, I had left home and was bouncing around from place to place and crappy job to crappy job, more or less constantly high and struggling to stay fed and housed. So I joined the Air Force in 1979, and there's me on my second day, and you can look at those eyes. Those are the eyes of somebody experiencing their first real brush with sobriety in years. And my idea was that the Air Force would be a way to get sober, escape poverty, go to college. And eventually it was all of those things. But I had a few more years of heavy drinking and drug use in me. And by the time I was halfway through my 4-year stint in the Air Force, I was on the verge of getting kicked out. So I stopped drinking, started going to community college classes to fill up my time. And that's where I had my Iceman Cometh moment. I took an English class. We were assigned to read Eugene O'Neill's play about a bunch of barflies in Harry Hope's Last Chance Saloon. And I saw myself in it. And I realized that the thing that I had in common with all of my friends was the idea that staying drunk or high pretty much 24/7 was a normal way to be. So I threw myself into night school, I got accepted at UMass, and there I proceeded to be the sort of student activist who works out his personal rage through leftist politics. So I started my first paper there. There's a pile of critical times. I have a vivid memory of applying for a typesetting job on the strength of critical times after I got out of college, and the person who owned the shop kind of held it like this, like it was some kind of excrescent rag, which it kind of was. It was justified. So I started doing direct action style homeless empowerment organizing at Boston Jobs with Peace. We were doing sit-ins at the State House, tent cities at the Federal Building, demanding more housing and shelter, that sort of thing. And after a few years, it became really clear to me that there was this disconnect between the organizing that we were doing, the homeless empowerment organizing we were doing, and the lives of the people that were involved. Because I realized that the horizon for social and economic justice organizing is very long and uncertain, and that the needs of homeless people are very immediate and dire. And there was this disconnect there. There was a contradiction that I was trying to resolve. And street papers were the answer to that dilemma. Homeless people could be leaders in the fight for justice. They could be out there talking to people, and they could earn the money that they needed to survive at the same time. So I started the Spare Change street paper in Boston in '92. And I'm just going to move forward to that, skip over to Real Change, move the story about 15 years ago, to when we decided that we needed to step up our journalism game. So by 2007, Real Change had grown, and we were serving already close to 300 vendors a month, and we were getting ready to go weekly. And we had this professional marketing research company do focus groups to help us learn why people did or didn't read the paper. And here's what we found. Where's this slide? Oh, that's another cover. I've got some random covers in here. People come to street papers with a bunch of deeply ingrained assumptions. I just ran into it tonight. Most of them are negative. Let me back up. I think. See, my problem is I've got numbers here and I don't know what my numbers are. But anyway, what most people believed was that street papers are produced by homeless people, mostly for other homeless people, and therefore the well-intentioned but basically crappy content was an excuse to give somebody $1, but not something that you would actually want to read. And we decided that our job as a successful street paper was to confound those low expectations and give the vendors a paper that they could be proud to sell. So I've got a bunch of our layouts here so that you can kind of get an idea of what street papers really look like. So we would sometimes write about homelessness. I don't know why that's there. Yep, sometimes we would write about homelessness. I got a couple of homelessness layouts here. This is a Tacoma story that we did back when they cleared People's Park. But we also covered arts. Got a couple of art slides here. We covered music. Yeah, my slides are out of order. Politics, racial justice issues, labor issues, environmental issues, all stuff that people are interested in, you know. This is us at an action. That's Carl Nakajima, one of our vendors, and Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam. And we are at Seattle City Hall fighting for mobile toilets in that picture. So, while the journalism and activism are really important pieces of the street paper model, at the end of the day, it's really all about the vendors. And I mentioned the portrait project earlier. I thought I had a slide earlier, but I don't know, it disappeared. And I want to show you some of the work from that while I talk about the vendors, how vendors see street papers. We put a call out to do portraits of our vendors to artists in the community. Some of them worked from photos, others went to where the vendors were working and did their portraits like on site. That was one that was done on site. That's by Sam Day. I don't know if any of you guys know him. And these photos have hung with vendor bios about the people in them. This art is hung with bios about the people in them. In coffee shops, at universities. It hung for a while in Seattle City Hall. It's just a great tool for honoring vendors' lives and helping other people see homeless folks as not so different from themselves. Around 2015, we had a graduate student asked to do an ethnography of our vendors, and she went to where they sold and asked questions to try and learn about how they saw themselves in the world. I'm just going to keep moving through portrait project. How come that doesn't work? This is just like stopped advancing. Can you advance it up there? This isn't working for me. All right. So that student's name was Julia Rabin, and she was the daughter of travel writer Jonathan Rabin. And the paper she wrote was so on point that I started putting it in staff orientation packets when they would come to work for us. And I want to use some of the quotes from that paper. There's one vendor who said, "I love doing this because," how am I doing on time?
I think you're almost out, but it's so interesting.
I only got a couple of minutes left anyway, so. No, I don't think I'm going to do that. So one of the vendors that she quotes says, "I love doing this because you meet people and socialize with them and learn about them and they learn about you. I have one guy that came up here, I can't think of his name, but here's the sad part. His dog named Jake will see me across the street and try to get to me. He'll bark and his owner tells him be quiet. He might listen or might not, and he'll come straight up to me, and once he gets to me, he's happy. He's fine. But as far as selling real change, I enjoy it. I know all the managers at the QFC love me. A lot of the workers love me. I just focus on the people as they come in and go out." And Julie summed that up. She said that many vendors told me that they hated or feared the people that they lived with or lived near because of their unpredictability or volatility. And selling the paper might be the only social part of their day. And the connections that they make with regular society is vitally important in addressing their own personhood. So I thought that that was a fairly profound insight. Another vendor talked about the flexibility of being self-employed. He said, "Every vendor is an independent contractor. If I want to be generous and give someone a paper to introduce them to it, I can bloody well do that. If I have to take a break, I can jolly well take a break." I think this vendor was English. "If I were here 6 days a week and my son came to town and I wanted to take a day off, I can bloody well take the day off." So these are good things. And even though it isn't that much money, there's good things about it. And Julie comments that in contrast, the culture of most working environments the vendors are likely to access prioritizes subservience, amplifies dehumanization, and makes people feel like just a number, which is really true. I mean, a lot of the vendors just continue to sell the paper year after year, not just because they love the work, but because the work that they have selling the paper is frankly better than most of the other work that's available to them, just in terms of how they're treated and how it promotes their own sense of self. Another vendor, "I've been here for 4 years. Everybody knows me. You grow relationships with people, and that makes it fun. And that's where I believe society should be anyway, but they cut that off and made it to where we got the internet and everything, and now we're scared to cross lines. But I have great conversations with people all the time, and after a while they open up. A lot of people got a lot of problems, so you're kind of like an ear. I feel good about it, just trying to be what I believe this society should be," which I thought was pretty amazing. Over decades of doing this work, the core motivation has always been to offer a counterweight to the dehumanization that homelessness often entails, to give people a sense of purpose, a reason to believe in themselves, to bring some joy to their lives. Where's my joy slide? More portrait project, more portrait project. Robert W. This is such an amazing portrait, and it looks just like him. It's so dead on. Willie, you saw him before. Joy. There we are. We finally caught up. Yeah, to bring some joy to their lives and to make street papers accessible to communities and all across Washington State and beyond. We're creating a model. Oh, I was worried that that was not going to come out good because that was just like a meme. I thought it was going to be all blurry. We're creating a model that's vendor-centric, built for distribution in multiple cities, and it can speak to people across the political divide. I think that some of the most important work that we can do now is simply listen to each other. Dignity City gives homeless people in places like Tacoma a chance to be part of that conversation. And we're raising startup funds for the project. We've got a crowdfunding campaign that's going up in another week or two. But meanwhile, if you'd like to support the project, you can go to dignitycity.org and make a contribution now. And I think that there's time for questions.
Questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Could you touch a little bit on the funding for this and who prints the paper?
Yeah. So the funding it's really just bootstrappy as hell. You know, we've already raised about $12,000 for it. I'm in a situation where I can afford to not work for a year or two. So basically, nobody's getting paid. I have a lot of experience in doing grassroots fundraising around street papers, and I'm confident that once it hits the street, we're going to be able to build the funding to make this thing sustainable because people support projects like this. And we've got a crowdfunding video coming out in a week or two that's got a goal of raising 50 grand in startup funds. But, you know, we're just starting small and building it. And, you know, there's other major donors that we think are going to come on board that I've got relationships with that that we need to get our 501c3 first. So that's going to be a little while. And where we print it, I can't think of the name of the printer. There's like, there aren't that many printers around that have like rotary offset presses. But our printer is in Seattle, and we're planning on it being a glossy magazine at this point.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
What would be an example of the kind of money people would make by doing this?
It really varies, you know. It's a function of how great your spot is, how long you've been doing it, to what degree you're sort of a natural salesperson. There's a lot of variables in there. So, you know, for some people, it could be pretty bad, you know. For some people, they go out there and they're in the wrong place and they're not into it, you know. They're going to sell a paper or two an hour. And there are other people who have like built up a customer base and they get a lot of tips, and they don't like me to talk about how much they make because you know, people would stop giving them as much money as they do. So it's a real continuum, you know. And it also has to do with just how many hours you're willing to put into it, you know. Like one of our most successful vendors of all time was a guy named Ed McLean, and he went to prison at 16 for murdering somebody in a supermarket holdup. And he bounced in and out of prison. He became an international drug runner, went back to prison for that. And he couldn't hang on to jobs because he had like a kind of an, you know, he was anti-authoritarian kind of complex. And he started selling the paper, and this was something that he was in control of. He sold the paper all the time because he knew that he didn't use his spare time very constructively. And this guy, on his own, sold anywhere between 2,500 and 3,500 papers a month. So he was like pulling down good money, you know, and he died of cancer. And I went to his, I met him a couple of times at his apartment, several times at his apartment, because his dying wish was that I tell his story. And he had this like closet full of like suits and bowler hats and really nice shoes and like, you know, kind of long leather trench coats. If you haven't guessed by now, this guy was African American. And it was like all these expensive clothes, and he was like, Tim, I bought all of this with real change. Anything I want to have, I can have it, you know? And, you know, that was Ed. He sold the paper for 15 years in front of the University District QFC in Seattle. And he owned that place, you know? It was one of those places that other vendors haven't been able to be as successful in because there's so much like kind of panhandling and drug traffic around there that gets in people's way. But, you know, Ed basically used his prison skills, and he just ran that corner and did great.
Well, thank you, Tim. That was great.
Well, how much how much are the papers generally?
How much are the papers? At Real Change, we sold them for 60 cents to the vendors, and they had a cover price of $2. And then people tip. You know, it's not unusual at all for people just to give the vendor a $5 bill when they buy the paper and say, keep the change. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. There's an email sign-up clipboard back there in that corner. And if you aren't already getting these notices about the tripod shows, please put your email on that. So our next and last speaker is Chuck Fitzgerald, and some of you might have been here when he presented a couple of times back. A super interesting show that was, so I bet he treats us to something great tonight. He received his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Northwest Missouri State University with a concentration in sculpture and photography. He went to work at Boeing as a technical illustrator and later managed the visibility room for the digital development of the 777 jet. This program used computer solid modeling and virtual reality for the first time in history in developing a project this large. He left Boeing after 13 years to become a high school art and applied physics teacher. After 22 years of teaching, he retired and now does large and small scale sculpture and fine art photography. Chuck?
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everyone, for coming. A couple of audience participation questions. Has anyone here ever had vertigo? Okay, it's been visiting me for a few days. This is kind of scary, but I'm going to be okay. The other question is, does anyone here like Tacoma? Okay, so that's going to make things a little easier for me. I moved here in 1979 from not far from where Tim was. I was near Sioux City, Iowa. And when I started working at Boeing, I noticed part of the talk here was the aroma of Tacoma. And of course, I think we know what that is. It's been solved. But I said, hey, that's nothing. Sioux City has the biggest pile of crap in the United States because the farmers come in and the trains come in and there's a lot going on with cattle. So that was not a problem for me. Yeah, there's a lot of stock there. Like I said, I moved here in '79, and a friend of mine at the time was an ocean-going barge captain, came to visit. So we go, I live in Puyallup, we come down to Pacific Avenue in '79, and it was a little bit different then. So we're walking around, and we decided we wanted to have a beer. I think it was a Pabst Blue Ribbon. But we go into a place, many of them were boarded up, and Stan just, nobody was available to wait on us, so bam, hey, we need some help. And somebody came out of the back room, and we got our beer, but we're looking around and thinking, wow, this downtown is quite the place. Well, I went on with life, and as Lynn told me, by the way, are these lights okay? Okay. I went on with life and children, wife, and jobs, and that sort of thing. So I came back. I visited Tacoma in around 1997 time period from Puyallup, and I would take pictures. And back in those days, I had a Pentax K1000 film camera, and I put infrared film in it, which is used for scientific detection of bad leaves and that sort of thing. So what you're seeing up there now is a picture of, I think that's southeast of Union Station in about 1997. So they're a little bit blurred, but I found this black and white processing shop. I would develop the film, but the fellow's name was Bruce. And he had to move twice because of UW once, and then he just got too old. But he would print them for me. He was one of the best printers I've ever seen. So what this book that I'm going to grab right here, I published this. What the object of it is, in 1997, I would photograph the infrared image, and then I came back 24 years later and filmed the same spot. And of course, what I noticed, I went from a film camera infrared to a digital and that sort of thing. So I have 50 slides, and I have it figured out to about 15 and a half seconds a piece to make my 15 minutes, so I better get going. And by the way, these are for sale, and I'm donating my portion of it to my sister's pantry. It's down on North Tacoma. It's just a place that helps people, and so that's where the funds from my part are going. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so this is an image that I took 24 years later. It's been enhanced a bit. I did a little Photoshop playing around with it, but it's the same spot that the previous image was. I kind of wanted to do them side by side, but I don't think it works too well in this kind of a setting. Now this is interesting. 1997, down by the bus station, right after 911, I go up, I'm taking pictures. I got this one. Someone comes out in uniform and says, you can't take pictures of public areas. Why? And, well, because of what just happened. I thought I was going to bomb it or something. So that's an infrared shot, black and white, and as you can see, the green leaves all reflect like they're white. That's the scientific application of the film. And this is 24 years later. Threw a little Photoshop filter stuff on it, and the tree's still there. No one came out this time. I could take all the pictures I wanted. Different areas downtown in '97, was the process was changing. UW was coming in, the Glass Museum, that sort of thing. So I photographed some of these infrared. And by the way, these are like an end surface paper with it's a lot of tooth on it, and they're colored with, of all things, with a colored pencil. So it gives that impressionistic look, but that's the same spot quarter century later, as far as I could tell. I mean, I went back and kind of calculated all the buildings and that sort of thing. There's another one, cool textures, you know, that paint's peeling off there, and then you have the building in the back that's kind of clean. And 25 years later, similar but better. And by the way, I think there's only two, I don't want to call them negatives about this, but I think 48 of them are all positives, but there have been a couple changes that have happened that weren't necessarily upward. Okay, UW bookstore, 1997. Looks like they're up and they're raring to go, ready for business. Of course, pandemic had a lot to do with this, but this was taken to the same spot 24 years later.
Is that the same person?
I don't think so. The Sarco area down on the waterfront, I mean, it looked like something from the moon to me, and then when I did the infrared stuff and colored it a little bit, I really thought it looked pretty wild. But later on, we're seeing this sort of thing, 24 years later. Metro Parks, I think, has a big part of that, down on Ruston. Some more of that area, I think they call it wetland delineation. And that's what's there 24 years later. More infrared stuff. And that's what's there today. The lone tree, for some reason I like those single trees. An infrared shot, hand tinted, and here's what's there today, and within the 100 yards of that spot. Yeah, I'm just right off the tracks down below 30th. Metro Parks involvement. Some more really cool textures. I just like all those lines and different colors, and I take pictures of that kind of stuff, and people say, "What? Why do you like that?" And I think Diane Arbus said I take pictures that no one else would even see. So that's in a similar area now. It's all clean, straight, and a lot of different texture. Okay, this is one of the things that I was talking about. I think maybe we've slipped a little bit on this part of it. It's no one's fault in particular, but I didn't see any of this in 1997, or not much of it anyway. But now there's a lot of places, as Tim knows. So this was in 1997, an entryway of a building somewhere, and just a comparison. And a little work was beginning on the Union Station area. Downtown somewhere. And that's the same area today, quarter of a century later. Part of the Glass Museum, and if you look closely at that building in the background, I mean, you see quite a bit of change, I think, in 24 years. The structure's still there, but it's different. That was the old Tacoma Art Museum. And I took this picture, within the last year or two, but that was the building in 1997, and of course that's what we have now, a new art museum, and that's part of the front of it. Just went under that today. I'd come in here, I said, wow, I should have waited a little longer, because this was the beginning of it, And this is what I got quite a bit later, and tonight the whole thing was there. So things are progressing. It's hard to imagine, though, that part of I-5. I've lived here since '79. I get lost there because of all the different little detours.
Exactly where was that?
Let's see. It's is it? Who said something? L Street. Yeah, it's by the Dome, going over I-5. And I think we're going to see what I call, nope, not. This is a bridge that's on Puyallup Avenue, pretty new. So I took the effort to call the city and who made it, blah, blah, blah. I found the engineer, and I said, did you do that for structural reasons or aesthetics? And he said aesthetics. Of course, I added the yellow. I like to add colors sometimes myself, but so that was an aesthetic idea on the engineer, which I thought was kind of cool. Enhanced photo by me coming out of, or not me, but someone coming out of the walkway to the Glass Museum. And some of these now I don't think are not direct comparisons. These are just kind of random things that you would not have seen in 1997, which you're seeing more of today. And we could jump back to that. And that's what you see today. Infrared. That film is, well, of course, everything's in the darkroom when you develop film. You can't have any light, but this stuff is really particular because you have to put towels under the cracks of the doors and everywhere because just a speck of light will fog the film. And that's what you see now, based on the previous image. This, I think it was this, I was taking this picture, and there was a gal outside having a break, coffee or cigarette or something, and I said to her, what do you think you were doing 24 years ago? And she said, well, I think I was in Puyallup High School listening to Bob Dylan. So things change, and, you know, we all know that, I guess. Just an image here that I thought, wow, they're doing some work down on Ruston Way, doing some electrical, and a bird got involved. This is up by Wrights Park. Went by there 2 days ago. So this was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 years ago. That's what it looked like. And then when I photographed it 10 years later, we had this. And when I went by it 2 days ago, it's a wall 40 feet up and the place is almost done. So it's an improvement, I guess. That wasn't there 24 years ago, you know, honoring our firefighters. During pandemic, anywhere, you know, you go, church or school or downtown or whatever, I find all these people with different types of masks. So I thought I'd put together a little collection because that definitely was not happening in 1997. Okay, this is what I mentioned a little bit earlier. I came up with this in high school. I called it a digital woodcut, which there really is no such thing. Woodcuts were done on wood by Albrecht Dürer and those kind of people. But I would have the students say, oh, I can't draw, you know, I can't draw, nobody can draw. So I let them take a picture of something, which that is. Then we slide it into Adobe Illustrator, and they can trace the image, and then we have a little way of flipping the colors. So it does look kind of like a woodcut. And the sign there, it's kind of hard to read that, but you are not alone. That means a lot to me, and it started to mean more to some other people I've talked to. I thought, well, that was cool that they did that. That was on Pacific Avenue. And I think that's back at the first one. So the books are for sale, $15 right here. If you want to, you can, if you want to buy one, you can just make it right out to my sister's pantry, or you can give it to me and I give it to them. They're also available at King's Bookstore, Marlene's Market and Deli, Tacoma Historical Society, and the Northwest Shop in Proctor, which I found out is going under remodeling right now, so they're not open. That's the show, yeah.
Questions?
I just explained that so well, no one needs to ask anything, or else you want to get out of here, one of the two.
Why did you use infrared?
I was always fascinated by it because, like I said, it's used in science they do aerial photography, and it detects diseased trees. And then I started messing around with it. I noticed that the foliage would turn white and the skies are dark, and just kind of a special effect thing. Yeah.
How did you happen to choose your location?
Just wandered up, random, just walk around downtown Tacoma. It was fun in '97, and it was fun 24 years later too. I just go, man, I got a digital camera here now. There's no film in it. The whole process has changed. The town's changed. Everything's changed. Yes?
Is there better beer in Puyallup now?
Better beer? Yeah, those microbrews they're the way to go. Is that what you asked me? Better beer. Yeah.
Anybody else? Chuck, as long as you're up there, you said in your information that you were one of the first people to work with virtual reality.
Yeah, that was for my last presentation. I thought, man, that was a little too much. I thought I calmed it down a bit, but you read the last one. But yeah, to answer your question, there's 1 million parts in a 777, most airplanes, and they also used to be done on, designed on drafting boards and with some wooden models. But the 777, kind of headed up by Alan Mulally, who became the CEO of Ford, was the first digital pre-assembly thing in the world. So you could get in a tube, hydraulic tube like this, and go 219 feet the length of the plane, and you could pop out of it anytime you want and look around, but the plane wasn't even built yet. So it's solid modeling and virtual reality, and it was quite an experience because I'm not smart enough to do that, but I ran the room that they'd show it off in, and I had access to 3 geniuses, a math doctor, a physics doctor, and I think he was a pediatrician that went to the air or design. But they would create these programs, and they'd say, all right, you see what's wrong with them. So I'm pushing buttons, and I said, well, it doesn't work on section 44 and hydraulics, and next day it's fixed. So I don't think I'll ever have that opportunity again in my lifetime with a computer or maybe with anything.
Does everybody here know what virtual reality is?
Isn't that what we're in?
Yeah, and see, with 1 million parts, they interfere with each other constantly. So that in the old days, or before this, they would have to physically move them, but this would detect the interference before the plane was built. So it was remarkable how, the progress they made in designing planes. And when I say solid modeling, it's like this has 3 dimensions, and it occupies a space. So if your space interferes with something else, somebody's got to move something.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting. So if you want to buy one of these, you can come up here, and Chuck will be up here, and he'll entertain you. So next month, the focus on the tripod show will be graphic novels. Is there anybody that doesn't know what that is? Okay, so it's a completely art show, and the three presenters are James Stowe, Richard Reynolds, and Abrian Curington. Thanks to Ann Darling. So that should be very interesting, and there won't be any more COVID anywhere, so we'll be able to have a good time. And by the way, the April show, which is April 22nd, I believe, they're always third Friday, will be the show that we didn't have last month. So that is Khaki Shields, Jeffrey Brown, and he'll be doing the Simple Things show. So a lot of you sent me images of just the most simple things that we almost take for granted in everyday life. He'll do that show. And then the third person is Danny, and she's a photographer, and she just takes beautiful detail shots, patterns of things. So I hope you can come. Thank you.